So I said we'd do more content, and here we are doing more content, that's for sure. Here for another discussion. I'm going to talk about instincts and politics. The idea for this came to me from a recent Facebook quote debate. We've just come out of hard lockdown where I am, and so there's a lot of people sitting around at home with nothing else to do. And as usual, it starts off with somebody complaining that all their work has gone and they've lost thousands of dollars, and then all the people come in and say, yep, that's criminal what the state's doing to you, or shut up, you selfish pig, we're all in it together. Some variation of those two, and then those two sides have at it. But what was interesting is that I was talking to a hard out Joe Biden filleting lefty guy. The good thing about me, I think, is after, I was a libertarian. That was the only that was the first, shall we say, ideology that I ever emotionally felt resonated with me. But after following Kurt Doolittle and learning more about propertarianism, expanded definition of property, full accounting, those sort of things, I'd have to say I'm definitely not a libertarian anymore. The perspective I come from, I think, is what I've learned from Kurt, and as of now, at this moment in time, it seems to me to be the truth, and that is that people's ideologies are their strategies, and if you want cooperation, you need to facilitate reciprocity between people's strategies and their intuitions. And so I'd currently, if I had to label myself, I'd call myself a natural law reciprocitarian. Maybe we'll get that happening, reciprocitarian. Oh god, that definitely needs to be cut down a little bit to make it more punchy. But look, the point was, I was having a debate with this guy. I was talking about communism, because the lefties and the people who love what's happening, they say, oh, so the Great Reset, it's a big conspiracy. It's like Dr. Evil. We're going to take over the world. And look, from the perspective that communism is a bait and switch to bait idiots into a false sense of being provided for and freedom from competition, it is a little bit like that. It is a little bit like that, because communism is largely, a big bait and switch to bait idiots who want free stuff into being slaves. But it's not that simple to just say that it's an evil mastermind brainwashing everybody. And so the point I was making from him said, no, it's not the rise of communism. Communism isn't the rise. It's not something that arises and brainwashes people and enslaves people. It's more an instinct that people have that needs to be suppressed. And I made the point that we're living in a time now. I said, if you've got a garden and you've got red flowers and blue flowers, and then you change the conditions of the garden to be favorable to the growth of red flowers and not favorable to the growth of blue flowers, over time you're going to end up with more red flowers. And that's exactly how it is, and we're living in those times now. The left did do what they wanted to do, which was capture the institutions, and those institutions have been self-selecting for red flowers. And so we live, I also said, it's also just in its inherent incentive structure that no institution that is taking government money or is subsidized in some way by the government would ever select for people who have moral intuitions that are opposite that are not for taking safety and security over risk and freedom. And there are a lot of industries and institutions that would be needed in the absence of government subsidy. Like, you do need doctors and you do need teachers and things like that, but we are living in a time where they are so heavily subsidized that there is no market for quality and things like that. You know, they, even if they're not directly getting money, and most of them are, but even if they're not directly getting money from the government, they are shielded from competition, from voluntary market competition by the government. I know I'm sounding like a libertarian here, and it's not the efficiency and morality of markets that I oppose. It's just that, you know, there are larger definitions of property that libertarians don't acknowledge. Namely, the propertarian definition of property, anything that people will invest in and defend. And so a libertarian, you know, where the libertarian thing falls apart for me is, you know, well, why can't I run a big company and import a whole stack of people from overseas to come and work for $2 a day? It's like, well, because what people will also invest in and defend is their culture and things like that. So, but that, all that aside, so I had a big back and forwards with this guy saying no, and he said, you know, I was a few other people arguing on my side and saying, well, the Great Reset and all this stuff. He goes, well, you've all got different theories of what's happening here. And I said, no, not really, because communism is also a handshake agreement between those with the intuitions for safety and security and freedom from competition, the underclass in a lot of ways, and the elites who have the intuitions for power and being happy to provide that safety and security, often at the expense of the middle class. So, you know, it's your typical take from the productive and give to the unproductive and keep a stack for yourself. And so that's why you do get these two classes. You get this stratification of extreme elite and massive underclass, because the people who are doing the redistribution are keeping a lot for themselves, and so they amass huge wealth and they parasitize the middle class. You know, let me know in the comments. Like, I would think stuff like that is pretty common. If you're following my channel, I'm preaching to the choir and it's not very interesting, but if you want me to talk more about that, you know, let me know. Anyway, to me it's not very interesting, but maybe it is to you, so let me know. But the point I was saying is that it's intuitions, you know, and there are, like, a, you know, very basic level, the intuition, the gut feeling of wanting to take to prioritize safety and security over risk and freedom. And that is because these constitute people's strategies. If you're a very let me put it this way, why would a fat girl be emotionally invested in a narrative that says, no, it's not skinny, well-proportioned, fit women who are attractive, it's fat women who are attractive? Why would she be emotionally invested in promoting a narrative like that in society? Very simple, self-interest. That's her incentive. And so when you get weak people, or people who are scared of competition, they're going to prioritize freedom from competition because they're not very good at competition. Whereas if you're going to get people who do well in competition, they like competition for obvious reasons. So this is where I was coming from, and at the end of the conversation, it was nice to be vindicated, because what he ended up saying, the health officials where I live were saying that we might have the possibility of wearing masks till Christmas. And so what is that, August? So basically 5 months of having to wear a mask everywhere you go outside your home. This enrages me, absolutely enrages me. The reason why it enrages me, I don't like wearing the mask, I can't breathe properly in the mask, but also it is just such a visceral reminder to me that I live in a society that has to operate at the level of the lowest common denominator, keeping the weak and the scared safe, and feeling safe, but that level is so far below me. I don't want to wear a mask. I'm being muzzled for the sake of people that are a lot weaker than I am. And so my intuitions are for freedom and risk, because I can handle it, and I love it. I thrive in that environment. Other people who don't thrive in that environment don't want that environment. It's very simple. But so after having a lengthy conversation saying, no, this is an instinct, these things are instincts and people can't become aware of them, and then, you know, him snarking at me and trying to call me a libertarian or a Trump supporter and all these sort of things, and, you know, assuming a whole bunch of things about what I think. After it calmed down, he said something to the effect of, if we do have to wear masks for the next 5 months, you know, till Christmas, that feels bad to say, but it also feels good to say, because on some level I'm having control over my future. I actually screenshotted it. I'm wrestling back control of my destiny. Very interesting way to put it. But I would say that what he's actually saying is that if I have that control over the future, even though in reality what it is terrible, having to wear a mask for months and months and months every time you go outside the house, for me that's horrific. And, you know, I'm very, very much not keen. And I won't be going places where I get hassled to put on a mask, as, you know, I will as little as possible. But for him, I think it comes back to exactly what I was saying. It's an instinct and an intuition. And for him, even though the reality of what it is terrible, but being told what to do and being able to predict the future makes him feel safe, basically. And you know, it's like that "oppress me harder, daddy" meme. You know, it's like, yeah, you feel safe being told what to do. I feel suffocated being told what to do. And these are very opposite intuitions. That's really the core of it. Is you have people who feel safe being told what to do and being made safe. I, on the other hand, simply feel frustrated and suffocated and disgusted. So another one too, under a Facebook article, you know, in my country they're pushing hard for no job, no jab. A lot of industries are saying if you don't take the vaccine, you're not welcome at work, you don't have a job. And, you know, it seems pretty evenly split. Half the people are saying this is horrible and, you know, infringes on our freedom and that sort of thing, and it does. But as I've been saying, the other half of the people simply, you know, they don't value the freedom, they just want the security. And so one of the comments under one of these news articles was, "Don't want to be part of the herd? Fine, go it alone. And we know what happens to stragglers outside the herd." And I had to screenshot that because it is just such an admission. It's a perfect admission of that herd morality. The weak band together for strength in numbers. Me, on the other hand, I feel like a bird with its wings clipped. You know, and I'm not going to say it's not impossible that, you know, that I eat my words at some point. You know, maybe I seriously doubt it, but maybe I would be one of those people that didn't want to be part of the herd and I got coronavirus and I died a horrible death. I doubt it, but in any case, my instincts are, I don't want to be part of the herd. I want me and my friends to form a pack. And the difference between a herd and a pack is the herd is strength in numbers. It's quantity over quality, whereas the pack is quality over quantity. I'd rather have a small pack of strong people that don't have to operate at the level of the lowest common denominator than be part of your herd. So yeah, that's the perfect way to put it, is quality over quantity for a pack, or quantity over quality for a herd. And so, you know, once again, people, when they have these Freudian slips, you know, they don't, I'm sure he doesn't really realize what the larger political implications of this or philosophical implications are, but they're quite willing to say, yo, you go outside the herd, whatever happens to you happens to you. Which is funny, because all I want to do is be outside the herd, you know, in a lot of ways. It's like, no, I don't want to be part of your herd. I want me and my friends to have a pack, and I want my pack to compete with your herd. So the next thing, I'm going to keep going on this thread, but it was an interesting couple of highlights that these are instincts that people have, and these instincts express their strategies and express their incentives. But the thing to realize is that people have very little ability to change these instincts and these strategies. You know, you can't I don't think that you really can ever get people who are huddling in a herd for strength and security. You can't get them to value individual freedom, because they don't, because it's not going to be beneficial for them. And vice versa, you know, like, I intellectually can appreciate that some people do need to band together in a herd for safety in numbers and for that quantity over quality, but I really don't like it. I'm not going to be part of that. It's not my intuitions. And so, because I was bored, I also watched the series Invincible, which is a comic book series. If you haven't seen it, I'm going to talk about some spoilers. So what I'll do is I'll put a screenshot up, and as long as that screenshot is up, I'm talking about that series, you know. So if you don't want me to spoil what happens in the first season, then just skip ahead to where I've gotten rid of that graphic. All right, so here we go. But I really did mainly watch it because of this meme. I wanted to see where this meme came from. It's a think, Mark, think, you know. And the other meme was, look what they have to do to mimic a fraction of our power. But this does actually tie into what I've been saying about strategies. So spoilers, once again, like, if the graphic is up, I'm talking about the ending of the series. So yeah, skip ahead if you want. But Omni-Man here, he's like an evil Superman. He's like the most powerful man in the world, because he's a extremely powerful alien. And that gets revealed over the course of season 1. Because he starts out as, you know, as a classic Superman hero, the protector of the world, but then he turns into, yeah, like evil his plans are more along the lines of evil Superman. But he is part of an alien race who are strong. They're like Spartans, you know. It gets revealed that basically they culled 50% of their population, and the 50% that was left was strong, and then they decided to create their empire and forcibly bring other worlds into their empire. You know, you know, and it's this whole thing when they talk about empires, you know, there is a civilizing aspect to it. There is a domesticating of the host population aspect to it. He says, you know, we can bring them medicine and order and prosperity and bring them into the modern world and technology, all these sort of things, but they can't say no. They're not allowed to say no, and if they say no, then we'll annihilate them. So that's almost like, well, I don't want to get in trouble for this, but it's almost like the extreme pack morality, where the pack morality, it's kind of like the Nazi thing, I guess, where it's like, well, we're just going to take control. You know, we're better than you, so let us rule you, and it's going to be better for everybody. On the other hand, the other guy, he's half alien, but his mum's Earth, a human. Mum's from Earth. And so he represents the current morality of like, well, yes, we humans may be weak compared to you, but there's something beautiful about us because we all have a soul, and you can't just kill us and rule us because we're all important, because each of us, essentially it's like current morality, leftism, everyone's equal, or Christianity, everyone has an equal soul. Even though leftism and Christianity aren't exactly the same, there is a lot of overlap in those two ways, in that I think, as Kurt Doolittle said, in a lot of ways current leftism, communism and that sort of thing is an evolution of Christianity, because the similarity is in the lack of hierarchy. Maybe someone who's more acquainted with Christianity can explain to me more about the Christian aspect of this, but from what I can see so far is that there is a parallel, a philosophical parallel between we each have an equal soul, which is, equality doctrine of Christianity back in the day, or the modern leftists, we are equal, and we should have that enforced, and that should represent in outcomes. So in any case, it was just interesting, and I'm bringing this up now because you've kind of got this like Spartan / Nazi super strong pack guy who's like, well, we killed the weakest among us, and what's left is strong. Pack morality. To the human thing, which is like, well, no, even the weak are important, and even the weak among us are valuable and each have a soul, and etc, etc. And so that's more the herd morality of the weaker things, And because of the current morality that we live in, of course, the show presents in that it's the human perspective that is morally superior. And so obviously, Omni-Man, who is the Spartan Nazi character, he's the evil guy and everyone hates him. That's cool. But the interesting thing to think about, I would pose this question. Okay, think about runaway pack morality, like the Spartans. Okay, something like the Spartans, where it's like, okay, you leave weak babies or unfit babies in the wilderness, and we'd say, oh, that's horrible, or look, like Omni-Man here, we killed half our population to find out who was strong, and the strong survived. And in our current morality, okay, that is immoral. We don't like that. And I've got to say that for me, I wouldn't like that society purely like that either. It's what we call heartless, I guess. It's inhumane. But here's the interesting question: what is the polar opposite of that? Okay, you've got extreme pack morality, culling the weak because they can't compete, they can't keep up, so leaving them behind, or actively getting rid of them. What is the polar opposite of that? Now, I would say the polar opposite of that, the opposite extreme to that morality, is subsidizing the weak, sparing no cost. What's another way to put it? Sparing no cost at all in subsidizing and lifting up the unfit. This is the whole Nazism versus communism thing. Communism, I guess, as a lot of people would want it according to their intuitions, sparing no expense to subsidize or protect the unfit. So when people start talking about this sort of thing, it's probably quite interesting to say to them, okay, what is the consequence long-term worldwide of the opposite of the Spartan / Omni-Man morality, where we subsidize, we just do not spare any expense to subsidize the unfit? And that's kind of what's happening as well with lockdowns and coronavirus and all that sort of stuff is this is a situation where, look, a lot of people would have no problem with this. In fact, you know, and they say, okay, I don't know what the stats are on the percentage of people that would have long-term complications, but we know that, you know, for most people under 70, it's a 99% survival rate. And, you know, Brett Weinstein has said that it's the complications long-term that are the problem as well, even if you're included in that survival rate. But what is the percentage of people that have serious long-term complications? We don't know, but even if it's 90%, well, sorry, even if it's 10%, well, we've got 90% of people of which the coronavirus is really not a problem. And so it can be interesting to analyze it from the aspect of playing off these two opposite moralities, the Spartan pack versus, you know, the lefty, everyone's important herd, you know. How many resources should be funneled into saving the weak and shielding the weak? You know, that's a very important question. And so, you know, as it comes down to Invincible and Omni-Man and stuff, you know, I'm watching this thinking, well, the show is obviously painting him as completely 100% immoral and 100% wrong, but he's not 100% wrong, I don't think. Because the problem is, if you spare no expense to keep subsidizing the weak, then you breed more weak. They outbreed the strong eventually, you know what I mean? And so it becomes dysgenic. The quality of your gene pool will go down over time, and this is kind of where we're at. One interesting thought is that, you know, people recoil in horror when you say the word eugenics. But what if there is no steady state? What if your choices are eugenics or dysgenics? The quality of your and I think, you know, that's probably definitely I think that's probably the truth of the matter, is that your gene pool is either in a state of dysgenics or eugenics, and that because the machine itself, the whole system is so complicated, you know, creating a steady state of neither is probably impossible. And so think about that when we're balancing off these two strategies, the pack and herd, is, you know, what if long term the cost of subsidizing the weak and sparing no expense in doing so comes down to sacrificing the quality of your gene pool long term? So a few thoughts I have on this. Alright, I'll get rid of Omni-Man because, yeah, you should check it out. It's got a lot of SJW bullshit in this show, but it's kind of cool beyond that. If you can ignore the SJW nonsense, the action and the storyline's pretty cool, so check it out. But I'll get rid of that when we stop talking about Omni-Man. So in terms of this interplay between pack and herd moralities, here are some thoughts. I think it has to be more of a spectrum rather than a binary. Rather than either or, it has to be a degree, you know, to what degree. And so I think economically, you know, there's the concept of the Laffer curve, in that you go past a tipping point where if you tax people too much, they lose the incentive to keep producing. And so it would seem to me that there is a tipping point. If you want to economically subsidize the people who can't compete in markets, you can give them some redistribution, but if the redistribution gets to the point where you kill the goose that lays the golden egg, so to speak, you take away the incentive of people to produce, then that's too much. If you are subsidizing the weak to the point which they are overwhelming the strong, it's too much. If you are providing safety at the point at which you're hamstringing the people who want more risk and more reward, then it's too much. And so it's a degree, it's a degree thing. It's like how much. And if you look at the strategies of the left, you know, they're going to be an expression of the morality that we should subsidize the weak and spare no expense, and that's the end of it. The libertarian thing, and after, you know, a few years of being a libertarian, I can tell you they are definitely the opposite end of the spectrum, where they will say, and I don't think they'd want to admit to themselves, well, suck it up, you know, if you can't compete, then suck shit. But essentially that is the end point of a lot of discussions for them. And look, you can tell where people are using an ideology as cover for their incentives and their strategy when they have a false premise. You know, people create stories to justify their strategies, and so the libertarian one is, well, why don't you just X? Why don't you compete? Why don't you pull yourself up by your bootstraps? All that sort of stuff. And the thing that undermines that is that people don't have the same ability to do that. They don't have the same intelligence, the same conscientiousness, the same personality traits, the same level of agency. But the problem is that some people, there are a lot of people who just simply can't and never will be able to compete, and so they are forever being left behind, and that is existentially scary for them. And so they do the only thing they can do, which is band together in a herd for strength. And like I said, you know, earlier on, you can't really talk people out of these intuitions and incentives. You just can't. And so enter the propertarianism thing. Like I said at the start, you know, I'm definitely a natural law reciprocitarian. I intellectually think that that's probably the only solution. You know, as outlined by Kurt Doolittle, and we've talked about that before. If you want people to have an incentive to be a part of the society, you need to find reciprocity between their strategies. You need to acknowledge people have different intuitions and they're not going to change them, and so you need to facilitate reciprocity between them. And I think, you know, the level of reciprocity that would be stable for a society is that you redistribute to the weak to a degree. You shield them from competition to a degree, not to the degree which you are hamstringing the productive and stopping them from producing, or that you are putting them on an equal level with the productive or the strong or the risk takers, but just trying to minimize how far left behind they are. Or in another way that I think Kurt's put it is that try to give them a soft landing. Try to shield them a little bit from being left too far behind. And so also I'd have to make the distinction that the Omni-Man thing, the Spartan, well, we are going to enslave people, it's a bit of a straw man. It's a bit of a straw man against that sort of pack morality. Because if you act upon somebody, it's categorically different to something in a state of nature happening to them. Like if you push someone off a cliff, that's a murder. If they die of a natural cause, or they're walking on a cliff and, you know, I don't know, the wind pushes them off or something, it's just a state of nature that's caused something, then that's an accident. It's not a murder, right? So Omni-Man, in a sense, where he says, you know, we're going, oh sorry, I'm talking about it, let's talk about the Spartans, where you actively enslave other people. It's also a bit of a straw man, because they're giving agency to the fact that as in a state of nature, people would be left behind. You know what I mean? But in any case, the only solution really is to take a bird's eye view of all these different intuitions and strategies and try to facilitate some reciprocity between them, which is why Kurt has said the only, arguing capitalism versus communism is useless, because the only society that can survive and will reach a steady state of reciprocity between people's different intuitions is a mixed economy where there's enough freedom for people to produce, but there's also enough redistribution to hopefully soften the blow for the people who can't, and to have them not fall too far behind. And this balance of incentives is what facilitates that cooperation and hopefully leaves you with a society that is in a steady state where everybody is getting enough of what they want that they don't feel excluded, and they have an incentive to submit to the rule of law, and that even if they're not getting everything they want, they get enough of what they want to be happy to be a part of it, as opposed to overturn it. And so, look, I'll just round it off there. That's the essence of when Kurt says, talking about capitalism versus communism is silly, because the only society that can survive, because of all the reasons we just talked about, is a mixed economy. But I will say that we are in a situation now where there is so much redistribution of health risk, should I say, of money, of opportunity and status, that we are subsidizing the weak and the scared to the point where it is seriously hamstringing the productive. And so, maybe I'm just saying that because as I've admitted, my intuitions say that this is too much because I want more freedom, but maybe that's just me. Let me know what you think in the comments. You can also join my Telegram, because we can have a chat there as well. But in any case, I personally think we're going to reach a time, we're in a time now, we're just on the cusp of a time, should I say, where we are going to see that the herd morality swarm the pack morality, and we're going to have that dysgenia. Well, we already have that dysgenia. But philosophically, if we are ever in a position to impose a solution, like I said, the solution has to be a degree between, to what degree do we redistribute to the herd? It's a matter of degree. It's not a binary, and that's what I'll say too. With the Spartan morality that we talked about in the show, it's not completely wrong, but we're in a time now where people will say it's completely wrong. They recoil in horror, but it's not completely wrong. There has to be an element of that. Anyway, went through a few different things there, but the overarching sort of thing I wanted to talk about is, with my interactions with people this week, yes, these are instincts. No, people can't change them. The irony, I will just say, I don't know if I really pointed this out before, but the irony from the first story when I was saying I was talking to this guy is that I was saying to him, these are instincts that people have, and he was arguing with me, calling me a conspiracy theorist and saying, oh, you just believe that Dr. Evil's going to take over the world and he's brainwashing people into communism. I said, no, these are instincts that people already have. And so he wrote me off for saying that, but then turned around to say, no, I basically feel safe being told to wear a mask for nearly 6 months. I'm like, dude, you are literally the perfect example of what I'm talking about. You are what I'm talking about. Because I don't feel safe like that. I don't have that instinct. You and I are very different. And the thing is, we have limited ability to change those instincts. And so that's the overarching point of what I wanted to talk about, and that's kind of the point, is that we've got an example of people expressing those instincts. We have these instincts and these opposing moralities being expressed in popular culture with the Invincible cartoon. But the propertarian, so the reciprocity solution is that you have to find a balance, because people can't really change these things. Well, not very much anyway. There needs to be, like from a bird's eye view, all these different things. If you can create reciprocity between these different strategies, and if you can't, you're in a state of conflict. And that's I think the basis of what why he says it's a scientific politics in a sense, because you can say, well, this ball is subject to the law of gravity, so if I drop it, it will fall. And you say, well, human beings, that's an analogy for saying, you know, as Kurt said, reciprocity is the only human equal sign. That is the law that we intuit. The human beings act under the natural law of reciprocity, and if you don't have that, they will be in conflict. And that is a scientific prediction, you know, you can make. It's a hypothesis, and you can test that. Are people in a state of reciprocity, or are they not? And if they're not, you will have conflict. And if people have enough ability to act on that conflict, they will, and so you just destabilize your society. Anyway, it's a really big way to make a point, and I've gone for a long time, but I hope you see that the ultimate point I'm trying to make is people act on these instincts, they express these instincts. These instincts are representations of their strategy, their incentives, and ultimately we need to find reciprocity between all these different strategies if you want to facilitate cooperation and have a nation that can survive. And if you don't, you're not going to be in a state of cooperation, and things are going to suffer. Alright, I'll leave it there. Let me know if you want me to revisit anything I've said here, because I've gone the long way around to make a pretty big point, but I hope you get the point. Cheers.